Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller. It's good to be with you on a chilly Thursday. We're live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille network. We'll hear from Chief Brasserie today on the program. She had a press conference at 11 a.m. today that I found captivating. I'm glad she's getting in front of this. I respect Chief Brasserie hosting a press conference today and saying, this is where we stand. Transparency, accountability, offering an idea of the plan of attack for Charlottesville Police Department, and what is turning into something that I'm getting more worried about. And it's shootings and killings, some of them in ambush style, 8 of them since October. You know, one thing that I've learned about being in Charlottesville for over 20 years now, I came to CVille as a first year at the University of Virginia. I've grown to expect dysfunction in government. I've grown to expect, that is part of the course here. However, I've always felt safe. Always have felt safe. Always have felt safe. And that is certainly a privilege of being white, and I understand that. Okay? I'm going to cut to the chase. That feeling is a privilege of being white, and we must understand that. I've always felt safe in this town. Now, 8 different shootings, whether they're related or not, it's still happening. And today, the police chief, the embattled police chief, that's safe to say, she's been under fire. She was interviewing for the police chief job in Dallas, Texas. And I have no problem with someone pursuing a vertical career path. No problem at all. I have no problem with the police chief interviewing for the job in Dallas. Dallas versus Charlottesville. Boys and girls, what's the better position? She's an ambitious woman. I'm an ambitious man. You're an ambitious woman. You're ambitious men. We want to climb the ladder, and we want to challenge ourselves to the highest degree of challenge. Okay, that's what successful people do. I have no problem with the police chief interviewing for a job in Dallas. I do have a problem with her calling out church goers, church preachers, and church deacons and asking them to resign. I have a problem with that. But that's to a side for now. I want to give her credit, and we're going to play sound from the press conference today. I want to give the police chief credit. The press conference was professional, was transparent, was detailed. She took questions from reporters. She said, here's the plan of attack, and this is what we need from the community. She referenced podcasters and influencers. I wonder who she's talking about there. Okay? We'll play a couple of different sound bites from what I thought was a very well-done press conference from Chief Brasserie. In kind of the Cliff Notes version, on Tuesday of this week, on Emmett Street, you had a gun battle like it was the OK Corral. Okay? You had Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and the Earp brothers going against some cowboys over on Emmett Street in Charlottesville. Then on Tuesday evening, in the 700 block of Prospect, you got ambush-style shooting with shell casings everywhere. The 700 block of 6th Street, you got the same situation. That's this week alone. Police chief says, let's get ahead of this. I would love to see city council do more of this. Certainly in how they're handling COVID. Police chief doing well. Judah, let's play the first part of the sound, the first part of the press conference. Before we play it, I'm going to ask anyone that's watching the program, get on your phone right now and text somebody to watch this show and listen to the police chief of Charlottesville. Tag your friend in the comment section. You need to hear what's happening in the community. We have the benefit of a long-form platform that's uninterrupted with commercials, a long-form platform that is not tied to a 30-minute news block between 11 p.m. and 11:30 p.m., where you have to air 8.5 minutes of commercials, and you only get 21.5 minutes of content of news. We don't have that issue. We can go long here, and it's important you hear what's happening in the community. The first part of the press conference with Chief Brasserie, Charlottesville Police Department, Judah Wickhauer, in 3, and 2, and 1.
More than a month ago, we stood before you to discuss the unprecedented levels of violence in this community. Unfortunately, the trend has continued into the new year. We understand the drivers of long-term systemic violence. We've studied them. We've explored the root causes of community violence to include poverty, exclusion from educational or living wage opportunities. We understand institutional supremacy and racism and its effects. Charlottesville does not need another commission, does not need another task force or forum to understand or address violence here. We are a resource-rich community. We understand what it takes to improve the quality of life for all of our residents and to create a just community where all can live safely and without fear. Yet beyond traditional police responses, police presence, reactive responses, patrols, arrest of individuals involved in these incidents, investigations, or more cameras, little more has occurred. So what can this community do? How do we collectively contribute to solve the problem so our actions are aligned with our words and not merely rhetoric? We unite all of our resources. I'm calling on all individuals, all organizations who called for change since 2017 to get involved. I'm calling on community advocates, influencers, organizers to go beyond Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, your news interviews, podcasts, or social media mediums to leverage your collective resources. What are you willing to contribute to solve the problem? More than sitting on a board or making your opinions known, what are you willing to do? What jobs are you willing to offer? Tutoring, training resources, mentoring, presence in the communities affected, mental, emotional, and health resources to treat the trauma and secondary effects of trauma in our communities. I have witnessed this community coalesce around issues it cares about: social justice, police reform, historical and institutional racism and supremacy. Community violence is a legacy, and our children are their inheritors. What are we willing to do here in Charlottesville to reshape, recontour, and rectify a 400-year legacy? Thank you.
More for the police chief very shortly, okay? More sound from the press conference very shortly from the police chief. Specifically, this question being asked: are arrests being made? What are we doing to solve the problem? She gives an answer, and again, I give props to the police chief for hosting the press conference. I give props to the police chief for offering transparency. I give props to the police chief for basically saying, hey, we're busting our tails to try to figure this out. We need the help from the community as well. I would love if City Council took a cue from the police chief and hosted more press conferences to show communication, to show human connection, to localize, humanize, and personalize their efforts. They live in the community too, City Council. If they come in front of cameras like this, in front of communities like ours and say, I'm struggling as well, I'm not certain, but I will figure it out. I'm scared in a COVID-19 landscape also. I feel you. That goes a long way with personalizing, localizing, and humanizing your brand. And that's what you should be striving to do, genuinely, as a politician. Now, folks, I want you to look at the screen. And before you look at the screen, I want you to tag a friend and tell them to watch the show. Because I'm about to show you the guns, the artillery, the semi-automatics that were recovered by the police in some of these shootings, okay? I put these on screen to make what's happening even more tangible. For some of us, and I'm gonna be very frank here, don't put the guns on screen yet, Judah. For some of us, and I'm gonna be very frank here, until these shootings hit the Greenbrier neighborhood, or the downtown mall, or Belmont, or North Downtown, or Rugby, or Rose Hill, until these shootings hit these historically white and wealthy neighborhoods, they for some reason, continue to fly a little bit under the news cycle. Do you want to know, and I'm going to give you a macro analogy, when an American, this is optics, this is branding, this is PR, this is communication, this is the type of stuff you learn in college, this is the type of stuff you learn just from having common sense, okay? When an American goes to the Caribbean, when an American goes overseas, and let's say something bad happens to this American while on vacation in the Caribbean, overseas, and in Europe, okay? What are the stories about Americans that get hurt while on vacation overseas? Which ones captivate the news cycle the most? Which ones? You know the ones that do? It's the ones where there's a pretty white blonde girl that goes missing on a vacation trip. Those are the ones that captivate the news cycle. It's wrong, but it's a reality. Okay? It's wrong, but it's a reality. A good example is, and I'm doing a quick Sage missing. I'm doing a quick Google search here. Okay, here's a perfect example. Charlottesville has had a missing person, Sage Smith, a trans person of color who has disappeared for over 8 years now. And this particular person, we're not up in arms and making a huge to-do about it, okay? The shootings that are happening in the city of Charlottesville are outside of the one on Emmett Street. The majority of these are happening in historically black neighborhoods. And the terribly unfortunate thing is it's not getting the attention it should. And it's certainly not getting the attention these shootings they would have gotten had they have happened in North Downtown, Greenbrier, in Belmont, on the downtown mall, in the row houses between Beer Run and C&O. If ambush-style shootings happen on Lexington Avenue in North Downtown, on Little Graves in Belmont, on Water Street next to Andrew Baldwin's core high-rise $1 million penthouses, the Washington freaking Post, the Daily Press, the Virginia Pilot, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and the National News would be here. But because these shootings, majority of them, are happening in low-income areas that are historically African American, they are flying somewhat under the news cycle. Look it, read it, understand it. That's happening. And I bring it to your attention because I understand I have influence in this community. I understand I have a platform in this community. I want to make a difference in this community. But even the news cycle has elements of systematic racism. You're seeing it. Show the guns that are being recovered. Look at the screen. Look at the screen. Look at the screen. Let me know when they're up there, please. Show the guns that are being recovered. It's just not. They're on screen now. Look. These guns being recovered in these shootings. Can you imagine if these guns were recovered in Johnson Village, if these guns were recovered in Rose Hill, in Greenbrier, off Lexington, off Locust, off Graves and Belmont, if they were recovered there as opposed to Prospect or 6th Street, what would Charlottesville be doing? They'd be freaking losing their SHIT right now. I mean, look at the screen. Now, the next topic I want to cover on this very program is this question. Are they making arrests? And Judah, you have me talking over that, right? Yeah, good. Thank you, my friend. Judah Wickhauer is our fabulous director. Are they making arrests? What are the ties? What are the correlations? Are they making arrests? The question was asked to the chief. She's an embattled police chief. Today, she earned equity points in the bank. And by equity points in the bank, I mean she did well. It's like when the husband completes the to-do list. When the husband completes the honey-do list, the husband gets some husband points in the bank, and he can pull on those husband points in the bank when he wants to go play pickleball with his friends at 10:30 in the morning. This particular Saturday, Mrs. Miller, I got some husband points in the bank, Mrs. Miller. 10:30 a.m., the buddies are getting together for some pickleball. I'll even buy you a Starbucks latte. I know you like those pumpkin spice lattes. Do they have them now? Is it January? You want one, Mrs. Miller? 10:30 this morning, 10:30 Saturday. All right. So she got police chief points. She should get props for what she did today. And here's the question. Are arrests being made? Are arrests being made? Judah, do you have that sound? Let's play that for me, please, in 3. Play that for me in 2 and 1. Let's go.
So in 3 of the 4 homicides, we've actually made arrests. In the shootings, we are making the arrests. We're posting those on our website. That is not enough to say what are the suspects and who are we looking for. What we're trying to do is stop the next act or incident before it occurs. And that takes more than just proactive police work. That takes community involvement, influencers in the community, our activists in the community. As I said more than a month ago, what do our leaders in this community look like, and what are their responses as well? How are they willing to collaborate with each other and with us to get ahead of these types of incidents of violence? But I've said before, we know the drivers of violence. But in this community, the response is often after the fact. And that's in most communities, that until they're personally affected, their willingness to get involved is little more than sending an email or putting something on Facebook or Twitter. What are we willing to do in terms of our dollars? We're going into budget season. What does our budget look like to address community drivers of violence? And again, that will then get into other conversations about budget. But budgets are driven by the things that we say that we care about. And if there's this level of violence in our community, the underlying drivers are our educational systems. The underlying drivers are the decay in our social support systems and structures. Those are the reasons that there are often violence. However, that does not mean that we tolerate that type of violence in this community, nor should it be condoned. We understand the drivers of it. That doesn't mean that it is still allowed to go on. There are rules to how we respond to these types of incidents. But the community, and when I say community, it's a collective C, not just residents. It's everyone in the community, the businesses, the school systems, our elected officials, as well as, like I said, the faith-based communities, our not-for-profits. Every one of us have an opportunity to contribute and make a difference.
Okay, so what I'd like to do before we move to our next topic, and the next topic is going to be a new vaccination center for COVID-19 at the old K-Mart location on Hydraulic. Okay? No more layaway and blue light specials, and no more crazy bread and Little Caesars pizza at that Kmart. Yes to Moderna getting injected into your arm. Yes to Pfizer getting injected into your body, and us maybe moving forward beyond this. It started yesterday, that topic, in a matter of moments. Before we get to that, I want to dot some I's and cross some T's on this topic right here. Okay? And I don't care if this pisses people off. I do not care if this pisses people off. Okay? I am being frank and honest and straightforward, okay? And this is how I'm going to dot the I's and cross the T's on what's happening in Charlottesville from an ambush shooting standpoint. The first part is looking at it as holistically as a community. We have to do well from a neighborhood watch standpoint, okay? We have to do well from a neighborhood watch standpoint. I am from the mindset that snitches get stitches. However, that does not apply to guns and murdering people. Okay? Snitches get stitches does not apply to guns and murdering people. If it doesn't look right, say something. If it doesn't look right, say something. Neighborhood watch, let's have each other's back. The second thing I want to emphasize on this program, second thing I want to emphasize, if these shootings had happened in historically white areas in the city of Charlottesville, like Belmont, North Downtown, Greenbrier, Water Street, Johnson Village, Rose Hill, you name it, you know what I'm talking about. You would have the national effing media here 8 shootings, many of them ambush style, since October. That's not happening because they're happening in predominantly African American neighborhoods. That's called systematic racism within the news cycle. And that's not right. You heard? I'm curious of your thoughts. Kenneth Martin has this comment. Kenneth Martin, I love when you watch the show, Kenneth Martin. Kenneth Martin, I love when you offer perspective on Facebook, and I appreciate you speak your mind. Kenneth Martin says, it's strange that you asked why the head of the police department was included in the interview process for the search firm and the city manager, but you did not think it was strange that the head of the public works department or the head or the transit manager were in the meeting. Any reason why, Jerry Miller? So I will answer that question straightforwardly. And if you can even ask that question even more directly to me if you'd like, Jerry or Kenneth. And how what you're basically alluding to is you said the police chief should have been in the hiring room, or you called out the police chief for being in the hiring room and talking with the search firm about the new city manager, but you didn't bring up the other 2 people that were on the Zoom call. That's what he's alluding to. Okay? And he's alluding to that because the police chief is black and the other 2 people on the Zoom call are white. The reason I bring up having the police chief on the Zoom call is because the police chief left the Zoom call in anger and then proceeded to write an email of the level of unprofessionalism of the search firm with the Zoom call and the city manager. That's the reason I brought it up, Kenneth Martin. The other 2 people on the Zoom call, who, yes, were white, they did not send emails or leave the Zoom call in anger. That's why I brought it up. The email and the storming out of the Zoom call. Okay? That's a topic for yesterday, though. But I did answer your question. The topic for today is to salute the chief, the embattled chief, for getting in front of this and bringing it to everyone's attention, the level of severity, the level of like, what the heck is going on? This historically doesn't happen in Charlottesville. Please understand the differences there. Comments. Put the comments in the feed. Put the comments in the feed. Wow, comments are coming in quite quickly here. All right. I have to get to Lee Elberson. Lee Elberson is the man. He's a brilliant man. I'm going to talk to him in about 2 minutes. Before I do, I want to wet your whistle with this because it's a piece of positive news for us. The K-Mart on Hydraulic has been converted to a vaccination center. With the help of the Bama Works Foundation, that's Dave Matthews and Corin Capshaw's foundation, and with the help of Red Light Management, Corin Capshaw. Corin Capshaw, again, showing how positive he is for this community. I said yesterday, arguably the most influential person in the city of Charlottesville, I said this 2 days ago with Tanisha Hudson, the most influential person in the city of Charlottesville is Mayor Nakia Walker. I stand by that statement. The most influential person in the city of Charlottesville right now is Mayor Nakia Walker, and it's not even close. She used her political muscle, and she flexed, and she got a search firm that had a contract of $40,000 or $50,000 kiboshed, and she got an interim city manager in John Blair, who I'm about to tell you how much money he's going to get, how much more money he's going to get for staying on the job as the interim city manager. This guy's retirement account, and I love John Blair. John Blair knows I love John Blair. John Blair, you know I love John Blair. I say it all the time, I love John Blair on this program. John Blair is the freaking man. John Blair is the freaking man. I love John Blair. I say it on this program. But it's public record, and you guys got to know. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't doing this. His retirement account is getting freaking deep because of interim city manager having to stay on city manager longer. I'm talking, dude is getting a $7,500 contribution, just got one on December 31st. Dude gets another $7,500 contribution to his retirement account on April 1st, and dude gets another No. On October 1st of this year, he gets a 10G contribution to the retirement account. So $7,500 he just got on December 31st. Another $7,500 on April 1st. That's $15,000. And if this dude's still in the interim role on October 1, guys, he's still going to be in the interim role on October 1. That's before the freaking November 3rd election. They ain't going to make it a decision by October 1. He gets an additional 10G. That is 25G plus the 10% pay bump he got from $166,670, his city attorney wage. He got a 10% increase on that, $16K and change. I'll show you who the top five highest paid city employees are in 2020. I got that list for you. We'll talk more about the Blair pay bump on this program. A lot we're going to cover on today's show. I'm going to reach out to Elberson, Chief Executive Officer, Clayborne Education, all-around A-plus guy, smart dude. Anything I've talked about so far, agree or disagree, put your thoughts in the feed and I will relay them on air. Anything I've talked about so far, put your thoughts on the feed. Oh, dude, Lee Elberson, you're looking very sharp today, dude. How are you?
Gotta have a reason to dress up, man. When I see you, it's the only reason why I need to dress up. Otherwise, I'm wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt.
So wait, are you saying you got Under Armour gym shorts on right now?
Actually, no, it's just normal shorts.
Okay. Lee Elberson, my buddy, CEO, Clayborne. All right, the show's yours, my friend. You read everything. You follow news cycles constantly. You like looking locally and macro. I'm going to go open-ended. I'm going to say something that has tickled Lee Elberson's fancy that we need to know about on this show. We'll start there. Anywhere you want to go.
I feel like it's hard to talk about anything other than politics, both on the national scale and in our local scale right now. But I'll say, it's interesting. The last couple weeks, I've been doing a couple things. I've been reading, I don't know if you've ever heard of this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of work happening in organizations for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And also got a chance to finally visit the Robert E. Lee Monument in Richmond. And I think, as I was watching your show before this, these things don't seem real until you see them with your own eyes. I think awareness requires sort of like zooming out of not just like your family unit and your neighborhood, but sometimes even out of your community, right? Because if you say, oh, well, in our community, we're on par with this other organization, and you have to zoom back and say, I mean, is that what is nationally accepted? Is that what's globally accepted? So anyway, I think, I almost never watch live news, like national news. But yesterday was obviously one of those moments where I was just sort of glued to the television. And I have to say that the sentiment that I shared was just, I was shocked, but not surprised. And I think the fact that I wasn't surprised, that's what's most disheartening to me. It's just like, I'm so numb to these types of actions from our U.S. president that how did this happen? It's like, as many things happen, it doesn't just like happen overnight. It's like, it just slowly starts to keep going until it's really, like I said, not surprising that protesters, probably best to call them extremists, are overrunning the U.S. Capitol. I think what this really, what I've been saying all along is that it's poor leadership. When you look back, I mean, there's so many different layers to this. I think, certainly the lack of police intervention sort of as this was happening raises a lot of questions, like were they prompted ahead of time, right? Like were they told, look, don't interfere, hey, this could get violent. But like if you compare it to some of the riots when the Black Lives Matter movement was happening, like why was there such an extreme difference in police intervention? Kind of just looking back to leadership, like what did the president hope to accomplish with this? Anyway, I think I try to zoom out and think, well, like where do we go from here? As a country, right? Because if that's reflecting what's happening as a country, normally what I would do is say, well, like I'm just going to focus on my immediate community. Well, I mean, we have poor leadership in the country, and I think we have a bit of a leadership crisis here in Charlottesville, right? And I think that's been brought up, and I think you're bringing this up on your show. Like, it's not just the search for the city manager. Like, when you look at the vacant positions, we don't have a human resources director, right? So when you have massive turmoil in an organization, right, like with these positions not being filled, having good people is different than having a good group, right? Like, interpersonal dynamics play a huge role. And, if you look at some of the quotes of the past city managers, they say that the city council was meddling too much. And so I think that there's just, it's probably time. We need a fresh start, and we need some fresh faces. And I think that's what Mayor Walker is saying, in some of her statements, that, we really need fresh leadership, and not just some of the city council spots, but all of these positions that have vacancies. So those are some of the things on my mind that don't normally occupy my time. I normally focus on small business and education. We'll say some things, some good things happening with small business. As you know, I'm the chairperson of Community Investment Collaborative. We distributed $12 million in grant funding last year, which is, obviously unprecedented. Most of our loans per year are in the hundreds of thousands. So I think that there's a lot of community support happening, especially to minority and under-resourced businesses. And then the education piece. Let's end with that if we have time. I'll just say this, I think we're headed for an avalanche in education. And I think the achievement gap is probably bigger than it's ever been. And it's only going to get worse unless we start to take some action. So those are some of the things on my mind. Obviously, I'm hyped up like you. There's just, how do you tackle them all? So back at you, my man. What do you want to talk about?
Okay, I'm going to unpack it. So this guy's I'm going to embarrass him here. One of the smartest guys in this town is this dude right here. And if you look over his shoulder, you see the Marine Corps flag. And he's a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. So I'm going to ask you this as a Marine, as a serviceman. While I was watching CNBC, just like all of us yesterday, and I'm getting I can't believe I'm getting choked up about this. I was humiliated to be an American. I was embarrassed. And it's like, I am the proudest American. My mom migrated from Cuba in the 3rd grade, with what she could carry on her backpack. And she speaks so highly of this country. And I love this country, and I was embarrassed. What were you feeling as a Marine and as an American?
Obviously the same feelings as you. My late father was a diehard Republican, and I think he would have been ashamed at what the leadership in the Republican Party has come to. And it's you look at what happens in a nation, right? When I was a Marine, you follow orders. And you follow orders under the assumption that there are checks and balances and that you have strong leadership. If I was a Marine right now, I think I would have a real crisis, because if there's not strong leadership at the top, that trickles down. You can only be such a good platoon sergeant if the orders you're getting from the top are not meant with the interest of the American people. And I think that's what I saw yesterday is a person acting out of self-interest. And it's just, something that's quite disturbing is the Turkish government is asking Americans to call for moderation. And it's wow, how did we get in this position that some of the countries that barely have a democracy and struggle with dictatorships are telling us that we need some moderation, that we've elected a person that could do this to our country and is still in power for the next 2 weeks. It's I was ashamed and just like I said, wondering where we go from here. In 2 weeks, when President-elect Biden takes office, is it over? Right? Is this the movement that Trump has brought up? it doesn't just die. So how do we patch things up from there? So anyway, those are some of the things on my mind, and I am not a politician.
Sure, but
don't keep up.
You're a guy with a voice that is backed by reasoning. And that's why I pay attention to what you have to say. $12 million with the Community Investment Collaborative in 2000. $12 million? I mean, that is just an astronomically amazing number. And can you put in perspective how 12 million is chopped up and divvied up? That way we can kind of understand the magnitude here.
Yeah. So to let you know, this is 12 million in most of these grants are $10,000 or under. So it's going out to a great number of businesses. And what this was CARES funding that went to some of the localities. Obviously, Albemarle County, but Greene, Fluvanna, and several others looked to CIC because, when a county is given money, the first thing that they want to do is they want to make sure that it is given appropriately to under-resourced businesses. And there's no better organization honestly, in my opinion, in the state, but certainly in our region than CIC to make sure that money is given responsibly and given to the people that need it the most. And so that's why they looked to CIC, and CIC staff, worked tirelessly last year to get those grants out. And when I asked our ED, I said, just kind of looking in foresight, like, what if there's a round 2 and what if more funding goes to localities? Would you want to do it again? He said, well, just let me get through this first. And that was like weeks ago. And now we're looking at like this could potentially happen again. So just to let you know, the process is actually fairly straightforward. When there's a grant that opens up, applying for the grant should be fairly straightforward for business owners like you and I. But if you're an under-resourced business and you don't have QuickBooks, you don't keep like accurate books, and you're asked for some of these financial documents, it can be very overwhelming. We've had tons of entrepreneurs that don't want to do it because of that. So just know that CIC's here to make that easy. The staff is great at like putting that documentation for you. So that's something that you should have outside of grant funding.
I love doing the crystal ball stuff with you. With Biden on the horizon, and now as we see the Senate in Georgia go the Dems' way, does your crystal ball say another round of stimulus, or deeper, impactful round of stimulus? That would be the third, right?
I think the deeper, more impactful stimulus. I know it's controversial, but the thought of giving every person $2,000 doesn't seem like a very effective use of it. Because if I'm somebody who's worried about losing my job or I've already lost my job, $2,000 buys me a few weeks, right? Like I still don't feel safe. I just know that I'm going to make it through the next few weeks. Having job security, that's what really makes people feel confident. And I know that's what we've done at Clayborne. Clayborne, obviously, we had a tough year last year, and we did have to make one layoff. But, the idea is like make sure to instill confidence and tell people they have a job. And I think that's what you're talking about, strategic stimulus and making sure that people feel confident in their jobs and not just, hey, we'll write you a check for the next few weeks. And again, I know that's controversial, but that's just a thought I had.
No, that is a good thought. And I hope and I pray and I cross my fingers that if there is another round of stimulus, that a lot of it even more is earmarked for restaurants and hospitality and food and beverage and live music. I know there was some earmarked money for venues in this last round of stimulus on a smaller scale, but certain industries are being hammered more than others. And then it's just the rich are getting richer. And I think we all know that. How about your words, your phrase, an educational avalanche with the achievement gap on the horizon?
Okay, so here's, in my view, what's happening in education. The reason why the achievement gap is getting greater is because the private schools, as I told you from the very get-go, their value proposition is the highest it's ever been, right? Because they're doing in-person and they're pretty much did a seamless transition into the pandemic with very few closures in the community and even nationwide. In the public schools where they had to do virtual, many of these families don't have a great environment for learning. It's multiple kids per home, sometimes multiple kids per bedroom. So having a quiet, private place where they can learn just wasn't feasible. And some of the students that we've worked with, even in Charlottesville, they're actually babysitting for their younger siblings. So they don't even have to be able to, they don't even have the appropriate time to be able to put in. So what we need to do right now is estimate what's the learning deficiency. That's what I ask every teacher when I tell them. I say, I need you to speculate for me. At the end of this year, I want you to compare a graduate of 7th grade this year to one that graduated 2 years ago. What's the learning deficiency? And it seems to be somewhere in the 30 to 50% range, which means 6th graders aren't ready for 7th grade. They're only partial 6th graders. So what that requires is curriculum needs to be rewritten. By and large, it's really not done by the teachers. It's done by states. And that is a massive undertaking. That usually takes years to ratify. And so I don't know what happens next year. Next school year, as we end this school year and we realize how far some of these students are behind, next year, do you then just pick back up and restart 6th grade halfway? And so I think the achievement gap, you can certainly see it on the test prep side. So the colleges went test optional, which I think is great to help. It's a great in principle to help under-resourced students, right? Because that was a barrier to entry. The problem is for resource students, it was not a barrier and it is still not a barrier. And so for resource students, they're still likely going to be taking standardized tests. So now when looking at applications, you have a student who's got, a resource student has their own room, the grades are likely better, and then they also have a standardized test score, and then everyone else is put in this pool of applicants with grades not carrying the same weight, and it's sort of being somewhat of a crapshoot. So I think that's part of the problem, and we've actually been in communication with a number of schools to try to help their under-resourced population.
Well, what is expected? Help me understand this. You made perfect sense there. What would be expected of the college then? I went to UVA, okay? Let's say you have a bunch of people trying to get into UVA. Some of them are in the pile of resourced. And a resource pile, essentially, lack of better phrase, is they come from money, right? And then the other pile is unresourced, where money's a little bit tighter than the resource family. So if the resource pile, the family, the kids that come from money, have the tests, have better grades than they did last year, because grades are probably inflated a little bit now. Yes, definitely. So they are inflated. So you have the tests, you have better grades than last year because they're inflated, and you have all the extracurriculars because you were able to do that at a resource school. Versus, isn't the responsibility of the college to take the most qualified students for the school year?
Yes, but now it's a resource problem. Now the admissions department doesn't have that extra benchmark, and so in going through the under-resourced pool, ideally, they want to take the time to look through all the applicants and really dig through those layers and say, hey, your grades weren't great, but are you going to be a good fit for this school? Because that's ultimately what the responsibility of the admissions department is to try to ensure that they set up students for success and ensure those 4-year graduation rates without having in-depth conversations with the students and reading through every single piece of their material.
How can they do that?
You can't. Yeah. So you have to triple admission staff, or you just take your chances. So I don't know how to solve.
Or you let more students in.
You could do that. I think in general, the students there's probably not a lot of students who could make it to through some university and don't get through. So it's a filtration process of what if UVA over accepts, then does JMU still accept, and then they change their applicant pool, and then you come down to places like University of Louisiana, and it's maybe they're letting in people who really should not go to the school. and are going to fail out, and then maybe that affects their ego.
You're a proud
and
University of Louisiana alum, aren't you?
I am. That's why I can talk smack about it.
How you said it.
Raging Cajuns, man. Raging Cajuns.
This guy, don't you guys love this guy? Lee Elberson. You know what I was just thinking about? Lee Elberson should have his own show on this network with Clayborne on the marquee. I'm going to brainstorm that idea.
I love that idea, because then we can start talking about what is most important in education. That's what I'd love to do. You know, you think about the skills students are learning, like teachers are sort of hamstringed into like just they have to teach to the test because their jobs depend on pushing students over the SOL benchmark, when what's really important is communication and comprehension skills and number sense. You know, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I deal with a student and they don't know, like, oh, they say, oh, it's growing exponentially, or it's not even in the same ballpark. And I say, you know, you've got 900 and this other person's got 950. You actually are in the same ballpark. If somebody's got 3 and the other person's got 8, you're not in the same ballpark. They have more than twice as much as you. So I think that sort of number sense is just going by the wayside. And to me, that's what's a very useful skill. You know that.
Lee Elberson, boys and girls, this guy's amazing. I'm gonna brainstorm that idea, and I'm gonna pitch some stuff to you. My friend, thank you for joining us on today's show.
Thanks so much for having me, Jerry, as always. And don't forget to read the comments. I've got some friends who've been chiming in like, hey, man, I put some comments to Jerry.
Oh, no. Okay. Am I missing the comments?
No.
What happens, Lee, I'll read the comments when we get off. What happens is, and this is no BS, is this guy literally, and I'm not saying all interviews don't, but this guy is so smart that I have to listen for the entire interview from start to finish to stay up with it. And I'm not saying I don't do that with other interviews, but I definitely do it with this one. All right, my friend, thank you. You have a good one.
You too, Jerry. Good talking to you, buddy.
Thank you. Good talking to you. I will get to the comments here. He's right. I need to get to the comments because he is a popular guy. And if you have comments for Lee, if you want to give him some props, put them in the feed, and I'll relay them on air on the I Love CVille show. A couple of things I want to get off my plate. Oh, man, we got a 1:30, don't we, Judah?
We do.
We have a 1:30? All right, so we have 9 minutes. I can make it happen in 9 minutes. All right, let's talk interim city manager quickly. I'm gonna educate you guys. All right, get some knowledge here. Okay, the interim city manager is John Blair. Again, I'm gonna say it. This guy might be my favorite city employee, John Blair. Okay, I sincerely mean that. He's the interim city manager. He was previously the city attorney. As the city attorney, he was making $166,670 in 2020, plus bennies. So he's making bank. When he was cherry-picked or tapped on the shoulder by council and said, you're going to be the interim city manager, he negotiated himself a sweetheart of a deal. A sweetheart of a deal. Okay? Judah, get the top 5 highest paid Charlottesville city employees from 2020 on screen. Okay? I'm going to show you a graph. I'm going to show you information that's on screen now. Look at the page. Look at Facebook. These are the highest paid people in the city of Charlottesville in 2020. The number 1 guy was the city manager. He no longer is there. The number 2 guy, the attorney, is now the interim city manager. The number 3 person is the police chief. We just heard from her. And then we had the Commonwealth's attorney and the public utilities director. They're making bank, guys. They're making bank here in Charlottesville. So John Blair got a 10%, negotiated for himself a 10% bump when he went from city attorney to interim city manager. That's roughly $16,000 and change, call it $17K. So you add $17,000 to $166. Okay? So what are you at? 73, $183. You're at about $183,000 and change, roughly. That's good job negotiating that. You should be paid more. If you have more responsibility, you should be paid for your added responsibility and your skill set. He should have gotten more. But look at what he negotiated from a retirement standpoint. John Blair, props to you, dog. Props to you, John Blair. Props to you. You negotiated a sweetheart deal, okay? He got $7,500 lump sum contributed to his retirement account on December 31st. If he's still the interim city manager on April 1, he gets another $7,500. He will be the interim city manager then. If he's still the interim city manager on October 1, he gets another 10 G's. 10 G to the retirement account. That's $25K. $25K into the retirement account between December 31 and October 1. Here's what I really want to know. And can somebody help me find this out? I really want to know this. Daily Progress. Daily Progress is watching the show. Nolan Stout covers City of Charlottesville. This is what I want to know, Nolan Stout. I want to see this in the newspaper. NBC 29 and CBS 19. Giles at Charlottesville Tomorrow. Every news outlet that's watching, I want to know this. What happens if John Blair is still the interim city manager into 2022? What happens from a compensation standpoint? What happens? I want to know that. We deserve to know that as taxpayers. It's our money that's paying these people. We deserve to know where our money's going. What happens if the interim city manager, John Blair, is still in the position in 2022 from a compensation standpoint? That's what I want to know. The next headline is something you've got to follow closely. I predicted this would happen 60 days ago on this program. 60 days ago on the show, I said, I'm advising restaurant owners in this community. Some of them are clients of VMV Brands, our advertising agency, and I'm advising them to close their doors during the winter months as we get closer to ubiquitous vaccine, herd immunity, and spring, summertime, when consumer confidence is going to be, amplified. Hunter Smith, owner of Champion Hospitality Group, announced yesterday that his restaurants, Passiflora on the downtown mall, Champion Grill in Stonefield, Brasserie Saison on the downtown mall, and his kind of retail Superette Saison next to Brasserie are all hibernating for the winter. All of them are hibernating for the winter. The brewery is still open. It's got a lot of outdoor space. It's kind of turning into an open-air brewery beer garden. I'm telling you, more will hibernate. More will hibernate. They will be able to pretty much limit their overhead to just their rent if they hibernate. They won't have food costs, employee costs, bookkeeping, uniform costs, dry cleaning costs, janitorial costs, all the jazz. Okay? So here's what we have to ask ourselves as a community. Remember, as successful entrepreneurs, we see down the road 2 to 3 steps. Everyone else is playing checkers while we're playing chess. So here's the question we have to ask. If restaurants start to hibernate for the winter and close their doors, what's going to happen to the restaurant marketplace? I expect some to stay open. I bet you the Wilson Ritchie-led restaurants and the Andy McClure-led restaurants. McClure's got Citizen Burger Bar, the Biltmore, the Virginian. He's about to launch a new concept, kind of a variation of Citizen Burger Bar. I don't want to spill the beans. Actually, I can't spill the beans because the sign is in Dairy Market. I'm not spilling the beans here. If you've been inside Dairy Market, you know Citizen Burger Bar is about to launch Citizen Burger Stand, and it's coming to Dairy Market. They have a stall with a sign on it. I'm not spilling the beans. There's a stall with a sign on it saying Citizen Burger Stand is coming soon. I will predict right now on this program, the Wilson Ritchie-led restaurants, the Whiskey Jar, Revolutionary Soup, the Bebedero, the Milkman, the Wilson Ritchie-led restaurants will stay open. The Andy McClure-led restaurants will stay open. And those restaurants, as they stay open, will do things safely in the right way. They will gain more market share. And as consumer confidence increases, as the vaccine becomes more ubiquitous, as herd immunity becomes more of a reality, as winter becomes spring and summer, the restaurants that manage to stay open throughout the dark days of winter will be the ones that will be best set up for explosion when we all go back to cocktails and happy hour, picking up chicks at the bar. I don't do that, sweetheart. It's my old days. I don't do that, Mrs. Miller. Don't do that anymore. But you know what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. The ones that stay open and make it through winter are the ones that are going to have the best explosion when this thing reopens. A couple more items, and then I'm going to get to the comments. I have a 1:30, oh my goodness. Richmond, Virginia, there's a brewery, winery, and a meadery that have all opened in Chester, Virginia, outside of Richmond. So this concept, it's called 3 Leg Run. It's a new brewery, winery, and meadery all under one roof. I would like to see more of that. The beer, the wine, the cocktails, all under one roof. Richmond's got one opening soon. Virginia beat up Wake Forest last night thanks to a second half run. UVA wasn't at its full force because of COVID. minus a couple players. UVA has Boston College on Saturday at 2 p.m. on the ACC network. Boston College Saturday, 2 p.m. ACC network. Get your comments in now. I'm going to read comments in about 20 seconds. I want to encourage everyone that we are using Ting to run this network. It is the best internet, and it's not even freaking close. You do Ting, and then you do all the rest, and then you realize, oh my God, what have I been missing? We have an offer through ilovecville.ting.com, ilovecville.ting.com, where you can get the cheapest price for the best internet possible, and it's not even close. Okay? Once you do it, you're going to be like, why have I not been on this the entire time? ilovecville.ting.com, and you save $288, free installation, and the first month's free. The people that have done this have sent me Christmas cards. I've gotten Christmas cards from viewers thanking us for the Ting $288 savings. Okay? It's that nice. All right, comments. Let's get to comments. Sean Napier says, facts, facts, facts. Sean, I love you, man. I haven't met you, but I love you, Sean Napier. Thank you for watching the show. Ray Cadell, don't leave Skyline tents out of the vaccine location at K-Mart. Pretty sure it's in the parking lot, not the building itself. Good call. Skyline tents, Ray Cadell. We should give them props. Setting up the tent at the K-Mart parking lot for the vaccination. Okay? I think you're right. I think you're right, Ray. I think it is in the tent. So it's not over there by the Little Caesars. You can't over there and get some crazy bread and get a Huffy bicycle and go get some baseball bats and some Carhartt and then go get some crazy bread from the Little Caesars and get the Moderna vaccine in your arm or get shot up by Pfizer. You can't do that with crazy bread and Little Caesar. Maybe it's outside. Maybe it's right. Christelle, catering director, CNO. She says it's a ghost town on the mall at night. Winter is absolutely here. She knows. She's in the game. Christelle, we love when you watch this program. Kelly Lewis, hello. Thank you for watching the program, Kelly Lewis. Jared Edwards says absolutely no leadership. Absolutely no leadership. And he says you can't always make sense out of narcissistic actions. I agree. It's shocking to me the similarities between leadership at the national level and the similarities between leadership at this local level. The power struggle, the bully tactics, the my way or the highway, the mentality of, oh, I didn't get the call, that wasn't a reach-in, it wasn't a charge, I'm going to take my basketball and leave the playground and no one's going to play. You hand check me. You're not going to make that call? I'm taking the basketball. The game is over. It's the same mentality at the local level as the national level. I'm going to take my soccer ball. You're not playing the game. You slide tackled me. You hurt me. And you're not making the call. Always good to see Lee Elberson. Tony Boise. Am I saying your name right, Tony? Darren Pisciotti. Great comments by Lee Elberson. Lee Elberson is great people. A lot of comments today. All right, my 1:30 is outside the door. Judah, the 1:30 is outside the door. We got to get out of here. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Vanessa Parkhill, James Watson, Keith Smith. Love you guys. Vanessa Parkhill is A+ people. Love when you guys watch the program. Kevin Poteet. Hello, welcome to the broadcast. Tony, thank you for everything. Blake Hawthorne, thank you for watching. Guys, it's the I Love CVille Show. I'm back tomorrow at 10:15 for Real Talk with Keith Smith. So 10:15. Do we have a guest? Do we have the information from Keith yet on the show? J-Dubs?
Not yet.
All right, so 10:15 Real Talk. I Love CVille Show at 12:30 tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. Wow. You guys have a good one. Tomorrow's Friday. Friday, J-Dubs.